There's nothing like the feeling of getting through the final week of your taper and just days away from your marathon. But what exact gear does a runner use to get them through the full distance? Hey, I'm Jack, an average everyday runner hoping to help others learn a little bit more about running. Today, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a gear guide as I prepare for my next marathon. I'll be going through what apparel I'll be wearing for the race, some accessories I'll be taking for it, as well as my nutrition sources. Without further ado, let's get into it. First up is the apparel, and I know many runners put a lot of thought into what exactly they'll be wearing for that race, so let me take you through what I'll be wearing. First up, we've got my Indigenous Marathon Project singlet that I'll be wearing. So I wore this when I ran New York last year for the marathon too, so as you can see, you've got the Australia on this. And so part of why this singlet is so special to me is all of us that were in the squad, so there were 12 of us, only 10 made it and received the singlet too. So part of the Indigenous Marathon Project is you almost have to earn your stripes, being these singlets too, and so they're not just given readily too. So this is something very special to me, and I feel like as I embark on my marathon journey, it seems, and hopefully completing the 6 World Majors, I do feel like this is going to be my race day top for all of them. For my shorts, I'm going to be wearing the Asics Meta Split short too. So again, was looking into wearing tights last year for the marathon, but couldn't quite settle on finding a pair that had enough pockets to hold all the gels that I was carrying for the marathon too. So big bonus with the Meta Split short itself is they've actually got holders for the gels on the front of the short too, as well as a pocket on the back of them. Wearing these in New York, I found I didn't really chafe at all with them and found that they were lightweight and breathable enough too for the entire duration. So thought I was going to stick with them. As I get into my Chicago Marathon build, I will be looking at some leggings to test out that have enough pockets to hold my gels too. So if you have any recommendations on running leggings that you use, feel free to leave a comment down below. Really keen to hear what your thoughts are and how you find them. As I mentioned, not using leggings, I find myself, I do need something underneath just to stop my thighs from chafing too. So I found last year that wearing my Step 1 underwear that is, I believe, locally made in Australia, you'll have to fact check me on that when I check that website. The biggest bonus that I found with these pieces of underwear in particular is they're made of bamboo, so they breathe very well and don't get anywhere near as stinky as what some of my previous underwear would after my long runs. Big bonus when it comes to the Step 1s is they've got like an anti-chafe glide panel on the inner thigh too, and even though I don't really have big thighs, I've just got small Jackie legs, runner legs, find that these do just as good of a job to get me through the entire distance without really chafing there. For my socks, I've opted for the Tabio ultralight compression socks too, and these I actually picked up in Japan when I visited over there just before the Tokyo Marathon, so I didn't get to see it, but found these have been really good just in terms of preventing my toes from getting blisters. I was about to say feet, which I mean, yeah, that part of my feet, but you know what I mean. So a bonus with these socks is they've actually got a bit of grip to them at the bottom too. So it's positioned on the toes, the heel, and the midsole of the foot. And in comparison to your everyday socks, I found I was very lucky to find these come just before my marathon as well. And yeah, we'll probably be sticking for these for the next while too. I know there are a few other toe sock brands out there. Maybe they have the grip on the bottom too, so I might have to do a bit of further investigating down the line once these run out or I decide they're not suitable anymore. But for now, going to be sticking with those for the Ballarat Marathon. Lastly, and probably most importantly for the apparel, is my runners. So going to be using the Hoka Rocket X2s. Again, this was actually my first pair of carbon plates that I've purchased as well. Ran New York in my Nimbus 25s, trained with them and ran that entire marathon with those, deciding straight after New York essentially that I wanted to try carbon plates too. So went to my local running store just to get fitted with all the different types of carbon plates out there. I found myself, particularly with the Nike Alpha Flies and Vapor Flies, my foot was just too chunky and the midsole was hugging way too tightly. Another downfall for those other types of carbon plates that I did try in the shop, it felt like it was going to be very difficult to get the sole out of them to put my orthotic into. So as you can see here, currently don't have the orthotic in it at the moment, but I found that the Hokas were probably the most supported to my running style. So compared to the other carbon plated shoes, the Hokas felt very stable, and that added ability to add my orthotic in was a really big selling point for me too. While I actually think this was the most expensive shoe out of the ones that I tried of the carbon plates, I do think it was worth that investment when I really didn't know what I was getting into when it came to the carbon plate technology. And just for reference, this is the orthotic that will go into each of my Hokas for the marathon itself too. Kind of regret when it comes to my orthotics getting leather on the top of it too, because I find that's probably what adds to the slipping and sliding of the shoe. But hey, I might even just get some grip tape to tape on my orthotics for future references. Now we get to the goodies that are the accessories I'll be using for my marathon. First and foremost, probably the most important to start with, is the Garmin Forerunner 5.5. Now, I actually just realized that I did a review on the Garmin 5.5 recently, and I titled the video the Garmin 255, realizing that the 255 is almost like another generation or so up from the 5.5, which is kind of like the base model. Anyway, long story short, I'm using the Garmin Forerunner 5.5 for the Ballarat Marathon. Thinking back to New York, I only had one alert set up for the marathon, being a timer for 45 minutes to let me know when to take the gels. Going into this marathon, I'm gonna be setting a timer for every 30 minutes to take my gels, and roughly seeing how I feel in the first bit of the marathon in terms of my carbohydrate and my salt intake. Again, I found myself struggling towards the later end of the marathon, getting to the 28k mark and beyond. Just wanting to make sure, because nutrition was going to be the biggest challenge for me coming into this second one, that I'm getting in that adequate carbohydrate intake as much as I can in the front part of the marathon. So in a way, front loading that effort to have that reward come later on in the marathon, if you know what I mean. Next accessory I'll be using is my Garmin heart rate monitor. So I feel like this is one of the earlier models. I think there's a pro one you can get too, but I found that this connects to my Garmin Forerunner 5.5 very well and gives me a pretty accurate heart rate reading. Reason why I'm wearing the heart rate monitor is to just keep a really good eye on my heart rate as we get later on into the race too, because obviously, like many of us out there exercising for so long, our heart rate will obviously increase and sometimes peak into that red line where we start crashing too. So wanting to keep a very close eye on that going into my race to make sure that I'm running at a pace that I can sustain for a good while before increasing that intensity towards the end of the race. Next accessory that I'll be using is my spy belt. Now, this is just going to be used to carry any extra gels and also my salt tablets that I'll be taking for this marathon. Now, even though the Asics Metasplit shorts have the gel holders in the front and the pocket in the back, bringing the spy belt just to really know that I've got enough carbohydrates on me to take over the course of the marathon too. So if I find as I'm getting into those further distances, needing an extra gel, having that as a backup just in case too. So would highly recommend, if you're looking for something to carry your gels, to invest in a spy belt. Up next, and I feel like New York's starting to be a theme of this video already, is my New York Marathon 2023 running cap. I found this has been really good, especially training in the summer here in Australia, at keeping the sweat off of my forehead and coming into my eyes. So using that one again, just to keep cool and keep the sweat away as I do the marathon. And also just in case it's a sunny day in Ballarat. Now, I won't be able to make a cool Ballarat marathon video without the GoPro, of course, too. So use my GoPro on my selfie stick that's extendable to get shots of me whilst running on the course too. Probably won't be running with this the entire time for the race too, so we'll hand that to my partner or my dad while they're out there cheering me on too, just to capture some content and hoping that they can get some cool shots of me as I run the marathon. Compared to when I ran New York, I only carried just the little GoPro itself too, and had that in my spy belt when I was completely in a world of hurt for those final 12 kilometers. So hoping that I can get a bit more of the final pieces to this second marathon for you all with the GoPro. Now, I actually forgot to include this on the list as I was writing this script for the video, but anti-chafe cream as well. So I think this has been really useful as I started getting into my really long runs for this training block. And yeah, just found that my thighs and anywhere down below my hips chafe a lot too. So if you're a runner, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together as to where you'll know that I'll be using that too. So I found that's worked heavens for me, especially after those 28 and 32k runs where I was quite sore in the shower. So anti-chafe cream as the final accessory here. Now onto this final part of the video, being nutrition, and I've decided to change up what gels I'll be taking for my second marathon here. Going back to New York when I ran it, I used Morton, both the non-caffeinated and caffeinated version gels to get me through the entirety of the marathon. I think I got up to my 4th gel, which was the caffeinated one, and couldn't even take that down, and was also when things just started spiraling completely out of control. So did an entire overhaul of my nutrition for this one. So these are the gels I'll be using for the Ballarat Marathon. First up, going to be taking the Humor gels. Haven't quite worked out when exactly I'll be alternating between caffeinated and non-caffeinated just yet, but I found particularly the Humor gels have been a great way to almost feel like I'm just consuming food on my long runs too, and have found the consistency pretty good in terms of being able to take it and not really need any water afterwards. I found I'm very much a texture person when it comes to taking my nutrition out of my long runs too. So I found that this was a great find, honestly, too. Bit expensive, I think. Here in Australia, I pay around $5.50-ish Australian dollars, and I'll do some calculations for US dollar comparisons, and yeah, it's a bit on the higher end for us too, and I feel like it's because they're imported, but overall still something that I'm going to be using quite extensively for the marathon. When I first started getting into the long runs that required me to take a gel for them, I was a bit skeptical at using this brand of gel, but I'm going to be using, the Never Second gels. These gels are isotonic gels, so very similar to an SIS. They are very watery when it comes to the consistency, and almost feels like just having a thicker kind of water drink as you're getting into your long runs too. So I found these pack quite a good punch. So it's a 60 ml serving size for 30 grams of carbohydrates too. So for a 60 ml serving, you're getting 30 grams of carbohydrates too, and this is why I'm kind of opting for these over the SIS gels, just in terms of the carbohydrate content it has, because I believe SIS only has around 24 grams of carbohydrates. However, as I mentioned, I've been using the SIS carbohydrate drink mix. Again, going to take the same option in front loading and taking them just in case and topping up those carbohydrate stores in the early half of the marathon before things start getting tough in the second half. Finally, just to make sure that I'm topping up my salt, is the Salt Stick Fast Chews as well. So these ones pack 100 milligrams of sodium. I have mentioned in previous videos that I do feel like I'm quite a salty sweater too. However, leaning towards just using the salt stick compared to your salt tablets, which are around 250 milligrams, only because it should be quite a cold event for Ballarat itself. I believe the starting temperature will be around 8 to 10 degrees in the morning too, so I'm hoping it doesn't get too warm in the later part of the marathon, where in New York I found I sweated so much compared to all the long runs I was doing here in the winter in Melbourne. But as a precautionary, I also feel like I'll be getting enough salt from the SIS drink mixes out on the course too, compared to New York when I actually didn't take any of the Gatorade that was out there on the course until realizing I'd hit the wall and it was too late. So there we have it, a little bit of a gear guide as to what I'll be using to run my second marathon, being the Ballarat Marathon, in less than 2 weeks now. I hope you found this video useful, especially if you're someone training for your first marathon and wondering what exactly gear looks like as you get to race day. It can be different for everyone too, and I hope that my little insight into what I prepare can help you in some way. If you're keen to stick around and watch some more of my content, YouTube recommends watching this one up here. I'm Jack, and I'll see you next time. Catch up.